This is the Spotlight on Media to Africa, live from Washington, D.C. And welcome to all our viewers across the world. Thank you. And we are going to plunge right into today's topic, the 2025 elections in Cameroon, the church leaders or the traditional rulers. We have an exciting set of panelists today with me in the office and some that are going to be with us remotely. So I'm going to start with the introduction of the panelists here in the studio. Michelle Ewan is a US-based Cameroonian music composer, storyteller, singer, and political and human rights activist, who is also the founder of Micheline Ewan Foundation, aimed at empowering, educating, and reaching out to all victims of abuse. Micheline Ewan is a force to reckon with, a woman of politics. Just of recent, Micheline was appointed Member of Parliament of the State of the Diaspora in North American region. The appointment falls under the African Diaspora constitutional duties of the President of Parliament, enriching functions of members established in the State of African Diaspora bylaws. She was awarded the Napolitan Victory Award in 2023 for her pivotal role played in the political arena. Welcome, Micheline.
Thank you. Good afternoon to everyone, and good afternoon to the panelists.
And again, in studio with me is Kenneth Ndere, I think a frequent panelist here, but he is the resident consultant to the Spotlight. Welcome, Kenneth.
Thank you, Brado. Just another day for us to look deep into the, let's just say, our 2025 crisis in Cameroon and what the traditional leaders are saying versus what the church leaders are also saying. Thank you.
Thank you, Kenneth. And I'm going to go to our remote panelist, Hughes Kamwa, who was here with us a couple of weeks ago. Hubert is a real estate business management professional in Washington, D.C., metropolitan area. He is an active officer of the Mid-Atlantic subsection of the CPDM in the United States of America. He's a passionate about the political and economic development of his native country, the Republic of Cameroon. He loves writing, reading, listening to all kinds of music, and working out. I can see he is really have those six packs. Welcome, Hugues.
Thank you, Mr. Tabinyi. I'm glad that we're meeting again and, of course, trying to make sure we have a clear understanding of this critical year of 2025 in history for our nation. I want to also wish a warm welcome to my fellow panelists and especially to Ms. Ewan, who it would seem is my first time for me sharing the panel with her. Hopefully, we're going to have a fruitful conversation about the country we love so well. Thank you.
It's a pleasure having you back, my brother. And then we have Ekine Agbabai, the iconoclastic public intellectual from joining us from Boston. Mr. Ekine Agbabai is a fearless journalist and public intellectual renowned for his scathing criticism of Cameroon's pervasive corruption, tribalism, nepotism, and misgovernance under the Biya regime, with degrees from Harvard Kennedy School of Government and Harvard Business School and MIT. Ekine's incisive commentary and hard-hitting op-eds have made him a formidable critic of the ruling CBDM party He has consistently denounced the tribalism, nepotism, favoritism, and institutional decay that has seen President Biya abuse the authority of the office to appoint his Betty Kit and kin into all commanding heights of authority positions where truth is often distorted or suppressed. Mr. Kine has stood as a beacon of hope, reminding us that speaking truth to power, no matter whose ox is God, is both the duty and a sacred act because truth is not a luxury, it is a necessity for survival. His sharp rhetoric, epitomized by the biting phrase, "Una draws the show," has galvanized social media activists and reform advocates. I think to add to that, Mr. Ekine Agbobai was embedded within the Unity Palace and he reported on Cameroon Tribune. Welcome, Mr. Ekine. Please unmute yourself.
You hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Yeah, so thanks so very much for having me. I'm glad to be here and to take part in this very crucial and important debate, not just as a stakeholder in that country, but as an eyewitness to history. So I think the debate should be frank, honest, and open as we seek a way forward to make sure 2025 becomes the year we can look back and say, well, this was a turning point for the country we so much love. So once again, thanks so very much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you for accepting to be a panelist. I think we in Cameroon are at an inflection point that needs frank conversations on how to move or resolve some of the challenges facing that country. Thank you. Yes, I think Lati might just get to it. Um, the Catholic Church, the recent spate of public calls by some Catholic bishops for Biya not to run for re-election and sweeping indictment of Biya's 43 years stewardship at the Supreme Magistracy left many wondering whether the dam has been compromised. But not too soon. The Tanganji and the masquerades of disgrace in royal regalia had other ideas. Recently, they held a meeting of the National Council of Traditional Rulers in Yaoundé. And to quote what they put out in the press release, through his frank speech, that is quoting President Paul Biya, the traditional rulers of Cameroon understood that the President of the Republic, during his end-of-year address, intends to correct certain malfunctions that hamper the development of our beautiful country, Cameroon. This statement from the President of the Republic, I can assure that my resolve to serve you remains steadfast and grows stronger by the day as we address the immense challenges facing us, caught the attention of the traditional rulers of Cameroon. In light of the above, the Council of the Traditional Rulers of Cameroon deemed it opportune to take a clear and equivocal stand on matters that take central stage to most Cameroonians, which is the 2025 elections. In recognition of this constant concern, the National Council of Traditional Rulers of Cameroon, after thorough assessment of the political atmosphere in Cameroon, have decided to give their full and unflinching support to the candidacy of Paul Biya in the forthcoming presidential election. I am going to really throw this question to all the panelists. If you look at these two positions, they are diametrically in contrast to two of the most powerful institutions in that country, the church and the traditional institution in Cameroon. Who should the people listen to? What are your thoughts? How did we find ourselves in a situation where the church is asking the president of the republic not to seek re-election because of the biting economic situation in the country, the suffering of the people, the challenges? Because I think they feel these people on a daily basis. These are the same people who go to these churches to pray. And then come enter the traditional rulers, saying completely that the president has done an excellent job and he is the only one who can address or fix the things that, to quote them, Napoleon left undone, even after 43 years. What are your thoughts? I am going to start with the only lady in the house, Micheline.
Okay, thank you for the question. You know, oh, sorry. Thank you so much for the question. I've learned over the years that there are people who will fight, and despite the challenges, they will continue to fight. There are people who are excuse makers, and there are people who are complicity and lack of empathy, and this falls on the chiefs. We know in Cameroon, actually, most chiefs are not chosen by the people. Normally, that's what's supposed to be, like the people supposed to choose who will be representing them. But most chiefs are chosen by the Minister of Territorial Administration. So these chiefs lost, most of them have lost their power. They're subject to the government because of, you know, the little payment they can receive here, the job that they're seeking in maybe the Senate or some ministry positions. And on the other hand, we have the priests who are not subject of the government. So they listen to the Vatican, for example. They are the one today who can tell the people what they're supposed to do. And if you see priests that are in a position of telling the people to choose even the devil, you can understand that it's like things are really, really bad. So the people are not listening to their chiefs because these they didn't choose them to be there. And the threat, so it's just a lot going on. The chief themselves, they are afraid. They know if they do, they go against the government, they're going to be reprimanded. So it's very complex what is going on in our country, actually.
Thank you, Micheline. Mr. Kine, can you give us your thoughts on that?
Yeah, thanks very much for this opportunity once again. I think I was trying to listen to Micheline speak, and I'm like, let me try to recalibrate the question you ask, because the issue is not just that the bishops, the Catholic bishops, they're calling for regime change. I think people have tried to misconstrue asking a 92-year-old nonagenarian not to run for re-elections with regime change, which I think that's a bit mistaken. But here's the point, though. At the heart of the Catholic teaching is the belief in the inherent dignity of every person, regardless of social status or political status. Autocratic regimes like the one we have in Cameroon often violate this principle through corruption, suppression of freedoms and human rights, political repression, rights abuses. So when such violations persist, church leaders, Catholic leaders have a moral duty to speak out against injustice and advocate for systems that promote human dignity. So the church comes to this issue with moral clarity. And I don't really see the comparisons because by virtue of their independence that Micheline referenced, from state control and their commitment to social justice, I think the bishops are uniquely positioned to amplify the voices of the oppressed, marginalized, and disenfranchised. Now, come back to the traditional rulers. Here's what I'm going to tell you. Anybody, whether you're a traditional ruler, you are a minister, or you are whatever, anybody who can be campaigning for a 92-year-old man to run a country is either a fool, a crook, or the person hates Cameroon. They are very unpatriotic. So I will assume that those traditional rulers, we saw them, some of them are very educated. They hold positions of authority in the government, they are senators. I will assume that they are honorable men, so they are neither fools nor crooks. So I'm left with no other choice than to conclude that they are very, very unpatriotic. They hate Cameroon. And we have seen that with these requisition crowds and rented that they come do all the empty grandstanding. Nobody has asked the CPDM. We know that any election in Cameroon, the CPDM is going to win, given the electoral machinery and how it's structured. What the country is telling the CPDM is, we don't, Paul Biya can no longer do the job. Give us a different candidate. Somebody who is young, who is energetic, who can do the job, who can rise up to the challenges of personal example. In this global economy at this time, Biya has served his time. It is time for him to go and rest. So all the empty grandstanding by the traditional rulers and those so-called chiefs or funds, it is just out of self-interest.
Right.
Because no matter how bad a system is run, like in Cameroon, how bad a country is run, there are always people who benefit from the system. And those people want to maintain the status quo. So it is not surprising to me that these chiefs, some of whom are even militants of the ruling party, are now asking a 92-year nanogenarian tottering on the borders of senile decay to drive the country down into its grave. This is not only wicked, but it's very unpatriotic. It is pathetic. It is shameful. And those chiefs or those traditional rulers, they don't speak for the people, and they should be hiding their heads in shame.
Thank you. Hubert, what do you say with what Mr. Agbobai is saying, that it is unpatriotic for anyone to try to call the president to run again? And I think we have actually a little bit confused in that the traditional rulers would endorse candidacy that has not been declared. So it's really a little bit confusing for those who are not political aficionados. Why the traditional rulers will come out and say something that is really the president himself has not put himself out that he was going to run.
Thank you, Mr. Tabinyang, and I want to thank Mr. Agwambai for his very energetic intervention there. I'm very glad that he mentioned that the call from these sectors of our country is not basically for the CPDM to get out of power, but that a 92-year-old president who has been in power for more than 40 years should not be allowed to represent himself. That's a good take there. I mean, that's a fair assessment of his, and I think it's okay for one to express that. What I wanted to bring to your attention and to the attention to my fellow panelists is the peaceful transfer of power is the cornerstone of any democratic society. I say this because sometimes we lose these big pictures and go into the micro politicking that happens when we do these kinds of analysis. Democratic institutions are there to serve a purpose. And the rule of law, whether customary, traditional, or modern, is very critical for these institutions to be upheld, hopefully through generations. The chieftaincy and the church, of course, are very strong societies, civil societies in our country, and rightly so. But I don't want us to take the utterances of a Christian prelate or bishop to be one of universal appeal in the sense that, yes, they are speaking for their own constituents. And we agree that Christianity as such, or the Catholic Church as such, is a confession of faith that is in maybe in the majority. I'm not quite sure of the numbers, but yes, they have a great influence in Cameroon. But we are a secular state in which regard every religious confession has to be given the same consideration. So if a prelate comes and says something, it shouldn't be assumed to be the opinion of the imams or any other spiritual confession that is existing in the state. We know the Catholic Church has a long history of intervention or of political engagement, not just in Cameroon, but everywhere else in Africa, Latin America, and beyond. And it's rightly so because Mr. Agumbai said the ethics and I should say, the virtues or the teachings of the Catholic Church are sometimes in contrast with government policies and all of that. So there's some kind of a delicate dance that goes on there. So they're free. It's one of the testimony to our democracy again that they can express themselves. But I don't want us to take it as if it is gospel truth. That is just something that they are expected to do from the Holy See, I believe, and depending on the teachings that they are expected to follow wherever they find themselves. Coming to the chieftaincies, we also know, and I don't want to go through a lot of historical things here, before the colonial experience, we had chieftaincies and customary authority that were actually de facto rulers of the people. Even when the colonialists came, they used those institutions as auxiliaries of administration because it was more expedient and practical that way for them to carry out their colonialist adventures. Beyond that colonialism and giving our post-colonial era, the modern state, which in the case of Cameroon started 40 years, I should say, 40 years or 50 something years ago, has also found a way to use these institutions to continue to build our young country. It is not an easy task, and it is something that the Republic, as I know, deals with very delicate diplomacy, because a democracy, by definition, is an elective form of government. And if you are an elective form of government, how do you conjugate with the customary authority which has been handed through the generations through traditions and other rights which are held strongly by these people? So we want to be able to understand these things, and for lack of a better way of putting it, they are mechanisms of good governance. I remember even my own grandfather, who back in the days was a tax collector and did some things that were very helpful in those days of the colonial administration. And same thing is happening now. The chieftaincies or the traditional rulers are custodians of traditional authority. Some of them may have lost that. And they are very important voting blocks. You know, we in the CPGM, we believe in wholesale politics, not retail politics. We
Yeah.
believe in making sure. Let me finish this part. I'll land really quickly. You have to understand that if the chiefs and those that are custodians of this rural authority, of traditional authorities, say yes, we're going to vote for the CPDM government, it's very easy for us to know that that voting bloc is in our pocket, so to speak. So it's these kinds of political machinations that are going on. It's not exactly as we would want it to be, but these are the kinds of challenges that we face as we continue to mold and build our republic.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Mr. Kanwa. I think I would like Lati to play excerpts of the meetings in Biya and then the meetings in Yaoundé to give our audience a broader perspective of what we are actually talking about. Because these conversations really need to have a proper understanding of the role of the church and the role of the traditional leaders. Lati, can you do the two videos for us, please?
The statutory meeting of the National Council of Cameroon Traditional Rulers of Cameroon was held at the Yaoundé Conference Center on Monday, 27 January 2025, with the Minister of Territorial Administration in attendance. Two items were on the agenda, namely the setting up of the new permanent bureau of the Council following the demise of its President, Secretary of State Ali Hayatou, who also doubled as the former Lamido of Garo. A statement from traditional rulers of Cameroon on the current political situation. After setting up the new bureau, taking into consideration the specificities of our 10 regions, the traditional rulers deemed it necessary to issue the following declaration. In his end-of-year address to the nation on the 31st December 2024, the head of state, His Excellency Paul Biya, made a vivid assessment of the government's action during the just ended year and then drew a clear roadmap for the year 2025. Council of Cameroon Traditional Rulers, after thorough assessment of the political atmosphere in Cameroon, have decided to give their full and unflinching support to the candidacy of His Excellency Paul Biya in the forthcoming presidential election.
The 48th Annual Seminar of Bishops is coming at a time Cameroonians are decrying poor governance and the need for change in the country, especially from their leaders. As the bishops meet in Biya, the president of the National Episcopal Conference, His Grace Andrew Nkeya, says though Cameroonians may be desperate, there is still hope for a better tomorrow.
When human beings lose hope, then there is no more life. Where there is life, there is hope. And therefore, 2025 is a year of hope, declared by Pope Francis as a Jubilee year. And we believe that our hope will not deceive us. We hope for a better future. We hope for a better country. We hope for more uprightness in the things that we do. Hope is a moral virtue, and hope will not deceive. Let Cameroonians not lose hope. Let us look to the future, hoping that it will be bright, and brighter that future will be.
According to him, the desired change in Cameroon must be a collective effort.
We all have to stand up. There is too much hypocrisy in Cameroon, too much pointing of fingers, everybody calling the other to act. Please, every Cameroonian should take their responsibility. We all have the destiny of this country in our hands, and we each have to play our own individual parts. You journalists, we bishops, political leaders, traditional rulers, farmers, traders, everybody has to stand up, fold their sleeves. Let us build our country, Cameroon.
His Grace Samuel Kleda of the Douala Archdiocese on his part says in no way can bishops in Cameroon be quiet or indifferent faced with the misery of Cameroonians.
Il faut encore le savoir, nous avons cette mission-là. Quand il y a des problèmes, nous, en tant que l'Église, nous devons dénoncer en vue d'avoir, n'est-ce pas, de trouver des solutions à ce qui ne va pas dans notre pays.
We are here at the Bishop Pius Our Pastoral Memorial Center in Biya, where over 33 bishops of all the dioceses and archdioceses of Cameroon are attending the 48th plenary session of the bishops of the country. And the bishops say they are unanimous to the sufferings of the Cameroonian people. They say they cannot be neutral or sit on the fence regarding the suffering Cameroonians are going through, especially in this very delicate and dire moment of the country. Reporting live from the Archdiocese of Biya, I am Amabila Leke with the Febren Gonti for Equinox Television.
Yes, Kenneth. I go back to that von Schaffer who was reading that statement, and to quote him, he said, the traditional rulers give their unflinching and total support to the candidacy of President Paul Biya. My question to you, and I can see what some of the people online are asking, Biya has not declared his candidacy. Why would the traditional rulers endorse his candidacy? That is a little bit confusing. Could you try to elaborate on that?
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Brado. The traditional rulers were gathered at I believe it's the Congress House in Yaoundé. And these, as you can tell, are the last kicks of a dying horse. I believe these traditional rulers are under a lot of pressure and heavy duress for von Schaffer to go out there very publicly with all the impudicity it entails to declare Paul Biya the candidate for the traditional rulers. You know, as Sekine mentioned a few moments ago, it is truly pathetic. This regime, unfortunately, the Paul Biya regime, because I even remember Amadou Ahijo visiting the front of Banso and a lot of the Lamidos in the north. It shows you the deference that Amadou Ahijo gave to tradition and the importance tradition played, especially in the 60s. And we know, following our Cameroon history, how important the Sultan of Fumban was. Ever since Biya came to power in 1982, we have seen a real eradication of our culture as a whole and the moral fabric, the moral values that pull us all together. I do not believe the traditional rulers are genuine in what they're saying. They are under duress. This meeting was planned very long time ago by the Minister of Interior or Administration, what is it called? Territorial Administration, Atanga Ponji. He probably wrote that statement, passed it on to von Schaffer to read, and von Schaffer read it on behalf of the people who attended. It is rumored that each of them was given, is it 7 million, something like that, 7 million francs CFA. So the youths, if you look at what has happened within the last at least 10 years, just about everywhere, most youths have had huge issues with each of these traditional rulers. In the case of Banso in particular, which I mentioned earlier, the chief of the fon of Banso of So does not even live in So for the last, I don't know, maybe 5+ years. He doesn't even live there. So it is really, it's pathetic to see what the traditional rulers are doing. With regards to the church, again, this is a very touchy area. Why? Because we've seen how the church has been persecuted, even since the Amadou Ahidjo days with Alban Dogmo, and then coming a little bit further into Paul Biya's time. We know what happened in 1992 when two sisters were killed. We know what happened in the north with some fathers as well who were also killed in 1992. And then more recently, I've forgotten his name, unfortunately, the bishop or so who was killed in the river Sanaga, and a note left. So the church has been, or the Roman Catholic Church in particular, has been persecuted in Cameroon for a very, very long time and has suffered under the Biya regime. And it is rather ironic that President Biya himself came out of that church scenario.
Kenneth, if I may throw it back to the panelists, the question is, the people are caught up between these two powerful institutions with different positions as far as the political leadership of that country is concerned. The church is saying that based on anecdotal evidence for the past 43 years, it is time for a change. It does not necessarily mean that the CPDM should change. It's asking that the person at the top of the Supreme Magistracy, who happens to be Paul Biya, should give room for a younger generation. But the chiefs are saying otherwise, that they will rather continue with the experience. Who should the people listen to in this situation? That is key. If we're going to be able to give clarity and educate the people on what is at stake, who are they going to listen to? Michele?
I think the people are the one enduring whatever is going on. I think the people are the one facing the difficulty, they're the one suffering, they're the one under the shame and the pain. So the priests are saying one thing, which is great. The chiefs are saying another thing. And if we look at the chiefs, they are around, most of them are around the age of the president of Cameroon. So they have been with him for all these years. And as the former panelist said, there is no choice. Like they are trapped. They're trapped in this. They're buying them. They don't have a voice. So, but the people who are going through this pain should make the choice. They can only educate them on and off, but they know what you're going through, and they will be the one voting. They will be the one. They can register to vote, but they will be the one deciding to choose the person that they're going to vote for. So everything is in their hands. That's what I can say. They will make the decisions of what is good for them.
Yeah, but it's hard for you also to say that everything is in the hands of the people when you're dealing with an entrenched system that had shown not once, not twice, that they are willing to twist the will of the people. So it's a little bit easier said than done. Mr. Akine, what do you really think? What should the people do in this situation?
Of those chiefs. You see, the Lamido of Garwa who read the speech, another endorsement on behalf of the imams, and the imam of the Grand Mosque of Douala and the Muslim traditional leaders. The Lamido of Garwa, I think Suleiman Rashidin, is 41 years old. He was born January 6, 1984, about 2 years after Biya had come to power. So he had never known any president except Biya. So it is shocking that a 41-year-old traditional ruler will be asking a 92-year-old man to continue running a country. That said, I want to go back to something Mr. Kramer said about wholesale and retail politics. The CPDM is known for wholesale politics. And this brings us to the crux of the matter, which is a problem. Who are these traditional rulers speaking for? Obviously, they are not speaking for their people. From Chafa, does not speak for anybody but himself and his stomach and his family. So when the CPDM thinks that they can coerce and co-opt all these traditional rulers and so-called chiefs, and then they assume by extrapolation that those chiefs will deliver their subjects, that is a stretch to compare that with the Catholic bishops. I mean, throughout history, Catholic leaders have played very pivotal roles in advocating for social and political change. In Poland, we saw Pope John Paul II. His support for the Solidarity movement was very instrumental in dismantling communist rule. In Latin America, we have liberation theology that have inspired the clergy to challenge those authoritarian regimes and fight for the rights of the poor. So the church social teachings, they are articulated in documents like Rerum Novarum or Pacem in Terris. Those are the documents that provide a robust ethical framework for critiquing unjust government. These teachings emphasize the importance of the common good and the preferential option for the poor. So when autocratic regimes like the Biya regime fail to uphold these principles, bishops are justified in advocating for systemic change. So nobody should come and tell you, oh, Biya is the only person who can rule Cameroon. That is an insult. Democracy thrives on regenerative change. It just cannot be that out of 25 million people, only a 92-year-old man can rule the country. Now let us do an empirical analysis. I'll ask Mr. Kamwa because he's the CPDM man here. Because the party is a party that has refused to change and the party is stuck in inertia. If any one of us on this panel, we are in Yaoundé and we want to go to Douala, we go to Guarantee Express, and we want to take the bus, and they tell us that the driver of that bus who will take us to Douala is 92 years old. Will any of us enter that bus? If you have a health ailment, you go to the hospital and you need an operation, and then they tell you that, look, the doctor who is going to operate you is 92 years old. Would you accept? If you take your child to go and put in a school, in infants one, and they tell you that the teacher who will be teaching your child is 92 years old, would you put that child in that school? But most importantly, if you go to take a flight to go to Cameroon or to come to the US or to England, and they tell you that the pilot of that plane is 92 years old, will you accept to enter that plane? If the answer to all these questions is no, what makes anybody think that a 92-year-old man should be running a country that faces so many severe socioeconomic, political, and security challenges? I just don't get it.
Yeah, I think to follow to that, it is. I'm gonna allow Hubert respond to that, but before he does that, Hubert, you excoriated the Catholic Church for daring to publicly call for Biya not to seek re-election, pointing to the secular nature of the state, and you asserted that Biya has not even declared his candidacy. Are you not at odds with the chiefs following their endorsement? Has Biya finally declared his candidacy for the 2025 election? Has the CPDM, within their internal political structures, already selected Biya as a candidate for the 2025 elections?
Brado, Mr. Kamwa, please, before you come into this, Brado just mentioned the internal structures of the CPDM. So, please, I want to draw your attention just as a recap that the CPDM, under its basic text, the highest organ of the CPDM is the Politburo. Since Paul Biya came to power and changed CNU to CPDM, it's basically been the Central Committee, which is an ad hoc committee that has been running the daily affairs of the CPDM, as opposed to the highest organ, the Politburo. That's the first thing. So, Mr. Kamwa, please address that. And then also, um, who is, because embedded in the basic text of CPDM, the what do you call it, the candidate for presidential office, naturally, as you guys would have it, is the chairman. So please clarify to us what makes you think CPDM's chairman is Paul Biya, because he ceased being the chairman about 2 years ago, or I think it's 2021. Either it's 2021 or 2023. His term of office had a long expired. So if you believe he's still the chairman, because I believe that seat is vacant
Well,
by law.
Kenneth, I think that is the prerogative of the CPDM members within their internal structure. Whatever decision that they're going to take concerning who is going to be the candidate for the CPDM, I think that all depends on the CPDM. The question that I want to know, and I'm asking Hubert to explain to us, uh, the last time he was here in the studio, he went after the Catholic Church that there should be separation of uh, the state and the church. Uh, I think in the beginning of these discussions, he also pointed to the importance of the traditional rulers as a structure that is supposed to be independent and really act as a guide to the various populations in their communities. Is he at odds with the position or the endorsement of the traditional rulers? Because Biya has not declared his candidacy. Like what he said last time, that Biya has not declared his candidacy, CPDM has not indicated that Biya is their candidate until the time when Biya is going to officially indicate that he's candidate. Then we can be having these conversations. But we are here today because there is an obvious endorsement from the traditional rulers. Is there something that the public doesn't know? Is Biya the candidate of the CPDM government or the CPDM party or not? Hubert.
Thank you so much, Tabenyang, for that clarification. And it's just a matter of making sure that we put things in context. As you rightly say, it is public information if Paul Biya has been officially chosen to be the representative of or the candidate for the 2025 elections. The critical thing there is that time is of the essence, and of course, everybody's anxious, which is okay. We understand that. And so we're going to leave that to them and to the internal mechanisms of choosing that candidate. On the other hand, party militants such as myself and others here and elsewhere are very, and again, it's a matter of political desires, are very passionate about their leader. And you see that also with the National Council of Chiefs and their pronouncements. And it's what we call motion de soutien. You know, a lot of times you might confuse that with an endorsement, but it's an expression of a desire to see him run. As Ekine says, it is disgusting because he says he's aging, but that is fine. This is all an exercise of free speech. But it doesn't really matter. If the owners of the party, in other words, the party militants, decide to want to float the candidacy of President Biya, for the higher interest of statehood, it needs to be, they need to allow them to do that. It is not to say it's the best choice or is the worst choice. If you or any political outfit thinks it is a bad choice, then they should find a way to go ahead and fight that and make sure that they do so in a legal context that honors our republican institutions. That's all we are trying to say. You know, and again, I said we have a very strong governing text there, as Kenneth is alluding to, our basic text, and it's very clear the mechanisms there. I mean, sometimes in the future I may share this with you. These things are done in a very clear way, and there is nothing that is hidden. If it's public information. If it's something that we have decided and say we're going to say it's going to be probably so be it. That is, this nothing is hidden. There is no mechanism that's hidden. I just want us to be very mindful. In our current dispensation, most of our leaders have been there for a long time, and of course there is a wave of a renewal or regeneration, so to speak. Even when the Lamido of Garuwa was mentioned, he recently succeeded his father, who was also who had also been there for decades, you know. And these are the kinds of continuity that we are hoping would be established as we move forward in our democratic build-up. I have always insisted that, you know, in these kinds of things, we have to respect the institutions that we inherited and hopefully build on, make them better to serve the people. The traditional chiefs are basically custodians of traditional authority. In some cases, it is difficult for us to separate them from the current administration because some of them are senators and chiefs like von Chef and all of that. But the idea of a rural community seeing themselves as a voting bloc is something that is a political truth. And we work with that regardless of the fact that we have an elective parliamentary system, which would have been the
So,
mouthpiece of the people. So there is
so
this current back and forth that we try to honor just to make sure everybody finds a place at the seat of the table of governance of our dear country.
thank you. So, Mr. Kine, to go back
Yes.
to what he is saying about the traditional rulers being the custodian of our culture, I think the traditional rulers' action is a mirror image of a system of patronage used by Ayijo, practically state capture. Unfortunately, the Biya regime, rather than departing from the patronage system that it inherited from Ayijo, has perfected and amplified it, and has continued to employ it to enhance its ability to monopolize political space and resource allocation in the country. Would this be part of the decay and the rot in the system that needs to be changed?
Yes, it is just not patronage. It is abusive patronage anchored on ethnic inspired clientelism. You see, I was trying to tell, I've listened to Mr. Kanwa, the CPDM panelist here, and he seems to assume, just like my friend Kenneth, that the CPDM is a political party. In point of fact, though, in name, the CPDM seems to be a movement. But practically, the CPDM is not a political party. It's a loose amalgam of contending impulses and special interests revolving around one man, Paul Biya. The day Biya is no longer there, the whole pernicious enterprise will unravel. That is why you see all these requisition crowds and dry political jobbers and lackeys angling for political direction, trying to call on the president to be their candidate. Nobody wants, nobody cares who is who is campaigning for who. The campaigns have not even started. Honestly speaking, what they are doing is even a violation of the electoral law because that's active campaigning. And the electoral college has not been convoked yet for campaigning to begin. So I don't care. The CPDM doesn't respect any laws. The CPDM is not a political party. Article 2 of the Constitution gives the president the right to seek re-elections. Article 7 of the CPDM basic text says the party chairman is the automatic presidential candidate. Let us give them that. That is their political movement or whatever they call it, their party. But the question still remains. Allowing a 92-year-old man to run a country like Cameroon poses significant dangers. And these dangers are rooted in issues of health, decision-making capacity, leadership renewal, and national security concerns. Biya is old. The bishops are not against the president because he's called Paul Biya. He's a former seminarian. He pays their tithes to the church. You remember when multipartyism came, the people took to the streets against multipartyism, and they ended up with a solemn mass in front of the cathedral in Yaoundé that was officiated at by Monsignor Jean Zoa. So the Catholic Church at that time stood against multipartyism. So when the bishops are telling the president now, it's not that we don't want you anymore. They're asking the CPDM, give us a different candidate. Advanced age brings physical frailty and cognitive decline. All of us saw the president during the December 31st end of year speech. That's a president who can barely walk. He can barely speak. You could see the deterioration in his husky voice, the wrinkles on his face, the diminished swagger of his gait. Come on, let's get real. All of those things, they are affecting his ability to handle the rigors of governance. Cameroon requires a leader who can engage actively and make sound decisions on national security, socioeconomic, and political reforms. Any leader like Biya, not just that he's old, he faces enormous health challenges. That's why we have been hearing, or Cameroon has been governed with on very special high instructions. Sur les 13 autres instructions de Monsieur le Président de la République. Unelected people without no mandate, they are the ones now running Cameroon. That is the problem with allowing a 92-year-old nanogenarian who is stuttering on the borders of senile decay to be hanging onto office like a vampire. It's completely unacceptable. It is completely unpatriotic. And the chiefs, honestly speaking, they are just a disgrace to their constituents and they're a disgrace to the country.
Thank you. Kenneth, let me come back to you and Micheline here in the studio. And I would pull one of the quotes from that press release. The chief said, thanks to President Paul Biya, Cameroon remains a peaceful, upright, stable, respected, and admired country. Our support for the candidacy of His Excellency Paul Biya is therefore aimed at affirming and reaffirming the commitment made by the traditional rulers of Cameroon in 1983 to support Republican institutions, and President Paul Biya, who incarnates them at all times. There are key words that I see from that particular paragraph. Peaceful. Cameroon remains peaceful. Cameroon is stable. Now, it was pernicious to watch von Schaffer read that statement when for the past 5 or so years, von Schaffer has not been to his own enclave. The guy from Manu who signed on behalf of the Sarwas chiefs, Chief Tapetando, only goes to Manfei with armor cars. And then you're beginning to ask, these same chiefs from the 2 English-speaking regions of the southern Cameroons, how would they, in all honesty, sign a statement that says Cameroon is peaceful and stable when they have spent the entire 5, 6, 7, 8 years appealing for peace to return to the country?
Okay, so this is where we talked about earlier the very high level of hypocrisy, with these traditional rulers. Even the Lamido of the North, who read a statement a little bit earlier on, there's huge issues going on in the North with Boko Haram. In the last election in the West Cameroon, barely, in fact, I don't even know who voted over there. So it is very highly, people are not voting. There's a lot of insecurity. The semi-civil war is still quite active in both the Northwest and Southwest regions. As a matter of fact, I think it is this week, unless I'm mistaken, that CPDM even tried to hold a meeting in Bamenda, and the CPDM party was stopped. See, Brado, as Ekine mentioned a few moments ago, you know, this regime, the Biya regime, I think it's in its dying days. Because just sitting here and listening or taking cognizance of the fact that the new Lamido of Garoua, a 41-year-old young man, is the one who read part of that. You see, a few years ago, which is, I think maybe within the last 2 to 3 years, his very own father, Alim Hayatu, who's the Secretary of State of Health, Alim Hayatu died under very, very suspicious circumstances due to the COVID funds. And Alim Hayatu, of the Hayatu family who came from Yola in Nigeria in those days, in 18-something, to settle over in Garoua, their great-grandfather was Usman Danfodio. So this regime, and that is where the former president Amadou Ahidjo was from, the Garoua area, for this regime to have gotten rid of Alim Hayatu, it tells you to what extent these guys are going. And that is why I'm saying that a lot of these statements that some of these rulers are reading are statements that have been prepared, the kind of duress under which they are under, quite frankly, I don't know. And it is very well possible that if they didn't read some of these statements, maybe they, you know, who knows, they may be put to death like they did with Alim Hayatu. So, at the end of the day, we know the population of the youth in Cameroon. And as many revolutions have happened elsewhere, life is very, very expensive throughout the national territory. Cameroon is about 25 million. That population, at least 75% of that 25 million is made up of people who are 40 years and below. They would think on their feet, they would think with their stomachs, and they are going to react. They are going to react. So we can sit here and talk about the traditional rulers, the Roman Catholic Church. The Roman Catholic Church is doing exactly what they are supposed to do. And this, at the end of the day, what will happen in Cameroon is going to be determined by the youth.
Micheline, to come to you, don't you think it will require exceptional deception of logical proportions to qualify Cameroon as peaceful, upright, stable, respected, and admired country? I mean, coming from a region that has been devastated by the ongoing war in southern Cameroon, you have thousands of young men and women who are languishing in jails in Cameroon. You have the leaders of southern Cameroon, Sissoco Julius Ayoktabe, and his leadership team that was adopted in Nigeria, in the dungeons in Yaoundé. How do you explain the signature of the chiefs from these two regions, from the southern Cameroons, who have been calling for peace, to return to the region and the country on this public statement?
If I just want to stand on the Southwest Festival that happened a few months, I think like a month ago in Biya, one of the reasons why the chiefs organized the festival is because they were saying that they wanted to bring peace back in Cameroon. So for them, or for some government people talking about peace in Cameroon, I don't know where they are living. I don't know if they are living in Cameroon. But we can also understand, because most of them are living out of the country for the most of their time, like the president of Cameroon, for example. He have been staying out of the country for many years, and it depends on whoever is bringing the report on his table. What type of reports are they giving him to see that Cameroon is a peaceful country? We have actually like 5 crises going on in Cameroon. It's the north, the south is like close to Centrafrique, so it's a lot of crisis going on, and we have been saying that almost since 1972. I don't think we've had peace in Cameroon, so it's very shameful for them to stand and say Cameroon is a peaceful country. Cameroon, things are going, things are right, things are not like, what about the burning of all these houses? What about Pini? What about, those things that happen in Kumba? What about all those things? What about the prisoners, as you're saying? Did that free the prisoners? What are we talking about? So it's very shameful and painful when we see the people that's supposed to speak for us stand there just because of themselves, the selfish behavior they are abandoning the people. It's very, very painful.
Mr. Kine, I think I would like to get your thoughts. I was looking if I saw the chief of your own village over there,
Yes.
but it looked like there were so many of them that I could not see. What do you really think? Why would people really like? These are respectable people in some of these communities and elders who have cried for all these years. Some of them live in the coastal cities, as Micheline is saying, some out of the country. How do you really explain this idea that any one of them could sign that document clearly saying that Cameroon is peaceful and stable? I mean, when it comes to upright and being admired, that I cannot really argue with them. That remains on individual's opinion. But peaceful and stable, have they been living out of space in the past 8 years?
Living out of space. They know what they are saying. It's just, it's the ultimate triumph of stomach politics and self-interest and greed. The question we have to step back and ask is, why do these people want Biya to continuously be in power? Why? Because Biya's stay in power guarantees them the right to pillage and plunder the country. Now you're going to ask yourself, these people, look at Cameroon is a gerontocracy. For all you might care, the country is a failed state. Let us not sugarcoat it. Right? From the president of the National Assembly, the president of the Senate, the president of the Constitutional Council, all the top brass, members of government, if you can go down the 9 yards, all of them are tired old men who should have long left the stage. So if they want to continue hanging on and drag Cameroon to their graves, the question you can even cynically ask is, what have they not stolen in terms of resources?
Right.
What have they not stolen? Because they have amassed enough wealth for their grandchildren, great grandchildren, that they will eat and the money will never get finished. Now you take a man like the President of the Republic or the President of the National Assembly who can barely open his mouth to speak, or the President of the Senate who cannot even stand. You see, now they torture themselves because of their greed. If you want to hang on to power to continue stealing, the monies you are stealing now at 90 plus, when are you going to eat that money? So the people are just wicked. That's why I say they are very unpatriotic. And they are just wicked people. Because that's what they call reckless enrichment. You steal monies that you are never going to ever eat the monies. You see, £1 billion, Cameroonians have so become used to, because their public officials embezzle money in billions, that we have lost respect for the sheer size of numbers. It's just easy for a man to tell you that, look at the numbers for the AFCON gate or the COVID gate. Somebody stands and steals 10 billion. And some other person laughs. He said that other man stole 50 billion. Mr. Tabenya, if they give you 1 billion francs and you decide that that's your salary, and you're going to eat 1 million francs every day without doing nothing, you need to spend that money in 83 years. And today, like this, you cannot add to your age, you cannot live more than up to 100 years and plus. So why would you even steal a billion francs when you know you cannot use it? So back to the issue, the reason why these people want Biya there is because Biya guarantees them the right to pillage and plunder the national treasury. That's all of it. Those chiefs, they don't speak for anybody. They speak for their stomachs. They speak for their self-interest.
Are you in any way insinuating that all of these chiefs have access to the national treasury? Because I know, for example, like Tapetando, for example, there in Manu, where you come from, he's a senator and now doubles as another vice president of the so-called Council of Traditional Rulers. It's like piling upon position for the same individuals. And I think that is why I was referencing that. Is it not a system or just state captured by certain individuals?
It has been captured by a vampire elite since Biya came to power. That's why the system blocks the young, innovative leaders from emerging. You cannot develop a country when the best and the brightest are out of the country. That's the problem with Cameroon. Just take a look around when you were going to school. The people who were the best in your class, in your school at the time, or that you happen to know, how many of them are in Cameroon? Nobody. Everybody's out of the country. I expect the country to develop. The institutional paralysis and the political stagnation is what breeds the corruption, and that has weakened and corroded state institutions. And it is fueling the public discontent, which is leading to the civil unrest. The chiefs from the northwest and the southwest regions can play the ostrich that Cameroon is a peaceful and stable country. Of course, they know that the Anglophone crisis, even though it has now metastasized into a low-intensity insurgency, is far from over. It's not going to be over until there's a political will to solve the problem. So, extending Biya's presidency only further entrenches these autocratic tendencies and it discourages political. So, a country led by
And
nanogenic.
Hubert, would that political will to solve the problem include the unconditional release of the Southern Cameroon leadership and prisoners for an inclusive dialogue? Now, before you get there, I also want to really get your opinion on why would these traditional rulers say that Cameroon is peaceful and stable. I remember during the last uh, program that we had, it was your plea that we want to solve some of the challenging problems and bring peace back to Cameroon. Why would anybody, in all honesty, shape and form, tell the world that Cameroon is a peaceful country just because they want to look for reasons to say they are endorsing the candidacy of President Paul Biya? Why do you think this? Is it just because of the belly politics, as Kine is saying, or is it something that the general population doesn't really know?
Thank you, Tabenyang. No, so this, I need for you to understand that Cameroon as a republic was birthed out of the ashes of fire, meaning great unrest. If you remember the early history of our country with the revolutions in the Bassa and the Bamileke regions. So it was a great achievement of the Aidjo's regime and of course Paul Biya's regime that we triumphed through that era and are seemingly triumphing as a state over the present challenges that we have had in that nation. Ms. Elwin rightly mentioned that we are a nation that has faced and continues to face threats from up north, the east, and of course the northwest and southwest regions of our country, including the high rates of urban unrest. So relatively, if you see all these things, and despite all this, a functioning republic and where citizens are living their lives Yeah, relatively, you can allude to the fact that it's peaceful. In other climes or in other areas of our continent, it would have been a different story. We take this very seriously because we think we have done well given the circumstances. Now, again, and it's all like I said, it's relative. Some people,
Hubert,
for their
Hubert,
own.
Hubert, hold on to that thought. Wouldn't it be at odds with even your own statement last time that the need to be peace to return to that country? You can try to relativize the statement now, but 2 weeks ago you said peace need to return to that country for us to face the challenges of moving that country forward. It is a little bit, what will I say, unusual for you now to say or try to relativize the notion of peace, whether maybe it's a particular region or is a particular sector and all of that. Even the global community understands that there is a problem in Cameroon. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Yeah, listen, man. I'm telling. If you have a pair of shoes and you have, one the left foot fits well, and the right foot doesn't fit well because there's a pebble in that shoe, you can choose to wear that pair of shoe regardless of the fact that there is a pebble in that shoe, or you can choose to remove the pebble so you can have a good comfortable pair in which to walk on. That's all I'm trying to say. So it's not a like I said. To be honest, peace is a prerequisite for development. We all know that. I'm just saying that despite the challenges of unrest in or relative unrest in the southwest and northwest regions, which you guys gleefully call Western Cameroon or Southern Cameroon, has not stopped us. We found that it would have been a disaster if it wasn't managed well and relatively well. Same thing in the Boko Haram region, which was a menacing terrorist force there. We still have ongoing clashes. There's some piece of fire here and there, but we've done relatively well. So too with the menace from the east and our Central African neighbors, where we've had cross transnational banditry and all kinds of things. So we've done well. This is why I don't just want to have to think we are relativizing things. It's peaceful. It could have been worse. And again, it's
Hubert,
not because.
Hubert, to be straight up with you, I think we can sit here in the diaspora and say that we have done relatively well. It would be hard for you to look any person in the eyes from these two regions and say and tell them, those still in Nigeria who have not been able to return, those who are still internally displaced in the cities, a lot of these villages that have been completely deserted, for you to say that we have done well because we've managed the crisis well. Mr. Kine, do you believe, do you really see with what Hubert is trying to say?
They think for some, by refusing to admit the problem is going to go away. It has not happened for since 2016. It's not going to happen. And this brings us again to the crux of what the bishops were saying why Biya shouldn't run. Here is a man whose report card after 42 years is abysmal failure of the country in every indices of human development. Look at the roads, look at the healthcare, look at the educational infrastructure, look at our airports, look at every aspect of that country and tell me what works. Nothing. It is just a group of rent seekers that have taken the country hostage and a group of gerontocrats who have occupied the public space and why the youths are pounding the pavement. Only in Cameroon, where somebody goes on retirement at 55 and then somebody who is 92 years old and is still asking to be given a 7-year mandate. If they give Biya a 7-year mandate, by the time that mandate ends, how old will he be? 99 years? Even if the constitution says he can run, yes, but do we believe that after 90 or 92 and counting. Such a person, whether it's Biya or it's Hubert or it's me or it's Tabenyang or Micheline or Kenneth, does any of us believe that we still have our mental acuity and our human cognitive abilities in the same way like somebody who is 40 or 50? Of course not. So why are we pretending? The people who want Biya to stay in power and die in power are the people who are benefiting from the system. And if we don't come to that conclusion and look at especially the CPDM people whose responsibility it is as the ruling party or the governing party, they should be the one to use their internal mechanisms and say, look, the president has come to the end of the road. He can't continue carrying this mantle. Let us look for some other person. We saw it here in the United States. Joe Biden had a bad debate. The Democratic Party said, look, Mr. President, you love this country, you love this job, but you love your country more. Step aside. He did. So what is wrong with the CPDM that within their own internal processes, they cannot liberate this country by removing the monstrous liability of this 92-year-old senile-looking nanogenarian and free Cameroon?
Micheline, I think I want to come back here before I get to Kenneth. What do you think about what Hubert was saying, that the problem has been managed? And to add to that, Mr. Kine just said only people who are benefiting from the system that will want Biya to continue to be at the Supreme Magistracy. Do we have some of those people here in the diaspora?
Of course. Thank you for the question. We do have a lot like that. That's why we can see among us people who are saying we are the one destroying like the image of Cameroon. We are doing stuff that are putting dirt in our country. They don't consider us as Cameroonians anymore. I can understand the brother from CPDM. He cannot come here and just, you know, put out of the blue his political party. But that's the problem that we have. People are in denials. And if you don't accept that this is a problem that the country have, how can we get solution? And I also believe that the fact that Mr. Biya, I don't know 100%, but I think the fact that he's not coming out to present himself as a candidate yet is because even inside the CPDM party today, we have people who are saying he's old and we don't think he can present himself. So there's so much clangs and crises in the circle. It is making them not to take a right decision. I think for the CPDM people, I just want to say we are Cameroonians, and it's enough time for us to really see that people have been suffering for many, many years. To see that we have people displaced out of Cameroon, to see that we have political prisoners still sitting there, from the Anglophone crisis or from the CRM, we still have innocent people sitting there just because they saw the pain of their brothers and they said enough is enough. So we need to accept the fact that there is a problem in that country. People are suffering. We are Cameroonian. There's a 92 years old that cannot present himself. It's not healthy. For 42 years, he has not done nothing. We know that. As the brother was saying, the report card is 5 over 100 for sure. And we cannot continue on and on. Bringing Mr. Biya back as the president of Cameroon is continuing to sit on the neck of Cameroonians. And when we're looking at all the outings of the president of Cameroon, actually, we see in most of the pictures the wife standing there. And we can understand that she has to babysit him. And we don't need a president who will be working all the time with a babysitter close. So it's really time for him to go. 92 is enough.
Kenneth, what do you really say to this whole thing that there are people here, highly educated and accomplished people, that do not see reason that Biya should not run again. How do you really rationalize that?
I would say I know a lot of those people at a very personal level, and the truth is that they do not want him there, but they are afraid of recriminations of what may happen to their families back in Cameroon, to their homes, and so on and so forth. Nobody wants Biya there. I don't even know whether Biya's cousins want him there, even his brothers. You know, Biya is said to, after one of his brothers died, Mubarak, there was a family meeting and Biya refused to go to that family meeting. He later on asked them, is he not the family head? I mean, can you imagine right inside his own family meeting? Right? Anyway, let me go back to one of the things that Ekinem mentioned earlier, where he said CPDM was not a political party. Quite frankly, I would tend to agree with him on that because I remember a good number of years ago, President Biya was being interviewed, and when I think there was a journalist who said that le RDPC est le parti au pouvoir, and Biya made a statement. He said, "C'est le parti qui est proche du pouvoir." So what does that mean? It means that Biya sees himself as the power, and then CPD, in which he heads, is rather close to power, not necessarily in power. Anyway, so that speaks volumes of how he sees things, Brado. At the end of the day, one of the things that Ekine mentioned earlier as well was that there has been a mass exodus of the youth. Many of the people we went to school with in the 70s and the 80s, none of them is in Cameroon. And people are thinking on their feet. Everybody is trying to leave Cameroon. Not only people are trying to leave Cameroon, even civil servants. There's a mass exodus of civil servants trying to leave Cameroon. What other statistical measure does Paul Biya want to see, or what do they want to see? At the end of the day, look, where we are in Cameroon today, we still have a continuation of the Ahijo, Biya, basically the neo-colonial people who are in power. The people who aided and abetted France. Because if we look at things carefully, France replaced people in Ivory Coast, in Togo, they replaced Olympio, in Cameroon, they replaced André-Marie Bida and whatnot. And Biya is a continuation of that Louis-Paul Ojula neo-colonial class. What we need in Cameroon is a paradigm shift from those set of guys to the real independent people like Umnyobe. That class of people is what we need in Cameroon, you know. And I think that we all need to put our heads together and have, as Americans say, let Paul Biya get the step in. He needs to step aside and get out of the equation. Let us rebuild our country. Let us rebuild our country.
Hubert, do you think that with the continuation of Biya at the helm of the country, would there be a call for an inclusive dialogue, or would he be capable of resolving the Southern Cameroon's problem, given that for the past 80 years, the government had shown an unprecedented level of intransigence? In any way, shape, and form, they have refused to allow international mediation or even involvement in resolving the issue. And I think the last time there was an effort in Canada, the communication minister, is that Renee Sadi, came out and dismissed the effort that the government did not ask any individual or country to interfere in their local or internal issues. I think they pointed to the whole nonsense about sovereignty. Do you really think that there is that desire within the CPDM that has not been explored? Because at the end of the day, the Southern Cameroon crisis are going to be a key issue in this electoral cycle. And without us really having a plan to resolve that war, the development that we all craving for that beautiful country is not going to come. So do you think that there is that will within that system, the same old gerontocracy that Ekine is saying, who have been in denial to even acknowledge that there is a problem? I am looking at somebody here, Senator Tapetano Njepinso, that is in charge of conflicts, conflicts that you refuse, that does not exist. How do you create a structure for a resolution of a conflict that you say doesn't exist? Is it really possible that, or the CBDM has it within them? Bear in mind, these same traditional rulers have not made a single effort, a national effort, to call for peace or an inclusive dialogue, to say, let the country sit down and look at these challenges together as a people. The chiefs, the traditional rulers as an institution, I'm not saying about the national dialogue, the special status and all of that, because if they can come out now and state a position, what has stopped them from coming out and saying, we are at the base, we are at the grassroots of this country, and we can feel the pain and suffering of the people. There is a need for us to have an inclusive dialogue, to release or to engage in conversation to resolve this problem.
Thank you, sir. I think we all agree that the unrest, civil unrest that has been experienced for 6, 7, or more years in the northwest and southwest of our country, it's not been something that anyone is proud of. But I should say, and you know, you gotta get this before we can move forward, is that the primary responsibility of the chief head of state of the government, of any government, is to respect the territorial integrity of that country. And you would agree with me, I've been in this, following this unrest since 2015 at its inception, that despite the problems and the challenges that we faced in that region, there was relative peace, and our country was again being run, albeit not as perfectly as it should, but we had a full running system there. The idea that a fraction of the country, a geographical entity that has been duly recognized by international instances, is being threatened by a handful of, we should say, political renegades, call them what you are. It's not something that is negotiable, and that's what has led to the seeming intransigency of the governing authorities of that country. Granted, they've made some mistakes, but the President of the Republic, even in his last outing, has always called upon those our brothers and sisters to abandon their arms and come back to the fold. They have done, there have been many initiatives that have been enacted to kind of produce a way out for those who have taken up arms or for those who are responsible for these things. And it is ongoing. So whether it is Biya or the next president, there is always a very clear mandate on whoever sits at A2D to find a way to permanently resolve that issue. It is a dear mission that I think is in the heart of our leadership. That being said, and I want to address, I think it was Kenneth who said there's massive exodus of Cameroonians out of the country. And I usually try to bring this comparison so that we put things in context. There is also a massive exodus out of countries like Nigeria, countries like Ivory Coast, now neighboring Gabon, and everywhere else. But you see, the president, even in his most latest speech again, has always called upon us to come back home and build. He probably says that and you think it's just a joke, but there have been cases of a few diasporans who have gone back home and they are doing well. We're not saying all is perfect. We understand a regime that has been in power for 40 years will definitely suffer from political inertia. We do understand that. And we look forward to the revitalization and regeneration of our leadership. It is just a natural law. It is not something that has to be mandated by cause, such as what we're hearing here. It is very clear, even when you're having a football match, soccer at the college, you always have la bande de touche, you see? You always have a pipeline of leaders or substitutes that will come in if the acting players, or I mean the players on the field, get tired. And we are trying to make sure that whoever we have on the benches are people who are, of course, willing, ready, and able to serve the country. I don't want you guys to think it's just a klepto, whatever that you just put there, and kleptocrats have just taken over. It's not. There is a system behind the madness, and these things are done in alignment with institutional guidelines and the rule of law. That is why I really differ. Kenneth has been with this for a very long time. I remember way back, I think 2020 or something, 11 or 2026 or 8, he had actually written up back in the days and actually said that this is a time where there's going to be change and this is going to be this, and nothing happened. Not because he was wrong, but we want to make sure that our expectations are measured with reality, the reality on the ground. We get sometimes carried away because having lived away from the land so much, there are certain realities and specificities that we do not master anymore. It is a matter of making sure that there is continuity, political continuity, that is non-negotiable. Peaceful transfer of power. Once that happens, it becomes a big plus for our democracy. It becomes a big plus for the observers of international credibility who now say they have been able to transfer power from one generation to the other or from one leadership to the other without bloodshed, crisis, or any of those things that usually accompany those things. And we should all work towards that, regardless of the imperfections. The Northwest and the Southwest region is part of the Republic of Cameroon. Regardless of the historicity that has always been attached to the claim of those who want to separate or recreate history, it has been undisputably affirmed by international instances that that region is a part of the Republic of Cameroon and is going to stay so, whether it's with Biya or not. And there are other mechanisms that
Yes.
will be used or can be used. So.
Hubert, I think I want to go to Ekine. Hubert has, I think, demonstrated the intransigence that the CPDM government has demonstrated ever since this crisis started by dismissing a handful of political, what do he call that, or newbies, or whatever the situation is, who want to divide Cameroon. Without addressing the root causes of this problem, it is easier said than done that this crisis will be resolved. I am surprised that Hubert is oblivious to the president of his own party and the president of Cameroon saying on TV sometime in 2019 in France with Mo Ibrahim that they tried to assimilate this region and they failed, meaning that these were two distinct entities. How do you think, or do you believe that the CPDM government still have the wherewithal to resolving this crisis? First, by starting with the release or the unconditional release of the prisoners. Now it's election time that people have to know the issues. That is a critical issue that has stagnated in that country. While you're doing that, Kenneth, Hubert referenced that there's massive people also living from Nigeria, Ghana, Ivory Coast, and the rest. which is what most of the time he tries to just box everything together. But he has forgotten to know that Ghanaians, Nigerians, all of them have dual citizenship. And that is one key reason that even if they are moving, they are still going back in those countries to invest and not being harassed by the regime in place. To move things through Ghanaian ports is not as difficult as getting something out of Douala port. So, Ekine, while you respond to the first part of my question, Kenneth and Micheline would be getting ready to do the second part of it before we move to rounding up. Thank you. Unmute yourself, please.
Yeah, I think I was saying that the kind of whataboutism and that kind of circumlocutions bloviating that I heard Kenneth trying to or do that kind of revisionist rewriting of Cameroon history. It doesn't solve the Anglophone crisis.
That would be Hubert.
Yes, you bet, yeah. I mean, just like the National Dialogue was not just another CPDM, Extraordinary Congress that achieved nothing but a waste of taxpayers' money. I think solving the Anglophone problem is really not a priority of the Biya regime.
Exactly.
And I will tell you why. And it will shock you to hear, maybe. The truth is that Biya hates Anglophones.
Yes. Yes.
Biya doesn't care about them. He doesn't like them. He
Yes.
sees them like some kind of a nuisance.
Yep.
And I'll tell you why. I traveled with Daisin Vodo Victor after the UNDP Congress in 1997 from Gandre to Yaoundé on the train. I sat with him and spoke to him for more than 10 hours throughout that journey. I was trying to ask him because he had come to Gandre to ask the opposition, Bello and Frundi, the two main opposition leaders at the time, to make him the single opposition candidate that he would put together a 2-year transition, put an independent National Electoral Commission, organize elections in which he will not be a candidate. He said, the Cameroon, the circumstances, the way Biya has tribalized Cameroon to the point where it's very difficult to remove him from power, and anybody who takes over power after Biya, you have to calm down your knees and negotiate with Petit people. And it doesn't help the fact that the political capital of the country is in Petit territory. So, as they call themselves the pays organisateur, he said only a Petit man could remove Biya from power. And he told Frundi them, told Bello them. He said, so all what people are doing, he said, when Biya was prime minister, I asked him about that. He said, any file that concerns Anglophones that went to the PM's office, he went there to die. He said, so that Biya had that kind of impetuous, not just intransigence, but indifference and disdain and hatred for Anglophones that he really never cared. He said, at some point in time, President Aijo had to even reproach him, saying those Anglophones that you are treating with disdain, those are the people that will be the cause of your downfall someday. So we should understand that releasing the prisoners right now is something that Biya intends to leave for the next president who will come after him. But I can guarantee you, the president has no intention of resolving the Anglophone problem. And so Seseku and the others will be there to be used as a bargain basement for any future negotiations. But the fact of the matter is, those boys will not drop their weapons until the government gives them a compounding reason or some kind of a unique value proposition that brings them to the table and takes away the incentive for them to continue with the armed insurgency. It can be federalism, that's a game changer. It can be confederalism. I had written to the president asking him to create a 15-state federation and create a 15-state federation, a different Cameroon is possible. Those are things that people can look at and say, okay, for this country that we all love. Because we cannot trust the Francophones anymore. They humiliate the Anglophones, whether you are the Prime Minister or the President of the National Assembly or even cabinet ministers or senators, they are humiliated. To make sure this type of black blood doesn't continue in Cameroon, I said we should have a rotating presidency. When the president is a Francophone, the vice president will be an Anglophone. After 2 mandates, the Anglophone takes over. All these things have to be spelled out in the constitution. It can no longer be left on the whims and caprices of francophones who have demonstrated so much bad faith. Take Nigeria, for example. There are 36 states in Nigeria. The Federal Executive Council has 36 members. Every state has representation at the cabinet. So you cannot allow, because say you are the president, then out of a cabinet of 36, you appoint 20 from your tribesmen. And then you justify it by saying the powers to appoint is absolutely discretionary. No. The Betis people don't own Cameroon. They don't. Cameroon belongs to all of its citizens. And if the Anglophone regions produce 60% of the GDP of the country, and they don't get back 10% in terms of investments and major projects or appointments into high public office, then there's something fundamentally wrong with that system.
Thank you, Michelle.
I think until we start telling ourselves the truth, like acknowledging what is really happening. We have seen the dialogue, the fake dialogue that didn't go through, didn't bring any solutions, because they brought in the wrong people. They're hardly going out there to meet the real people that really voice for the English-speaking Cameroonians. So they keep going around the people that will play the game that they want to see or what they want to show. And as I said earlier, Mr. Biya himself, who is the president of Cameroon, is managing the country between his office and out of the country. So the people that are bringing report on his table, some of them are English-speaking Cameroonians. If they go to him and be like, okay, it's not only asking these people to drop their guns, let's create, for instance, a buffer zone where it will allow us to open the dialogue. Let's start releasing the political prisoners. I know some have been released, but not much. We want the leaders that are there because they are the voice of these people. When they start to tell the president the truth of what is really happening on the ground, because our own people are also the ones around him who are not telling them the truth. So it brings us to the chiefs. Are the chiefs really, are they telling the president the truth? Are they representing the people that are suffering? If they acknowledge that their own people, who are their own children, are suffering, then we'll start to see the change.
Kenneth?
Thank you, Ekine, for saying what you said earlier with your trip with Ayisim Vondo. If anyone has read the John Gu Foncha's resignation letter from the CPDM, it brings a lot of tears for the average Anglophone, or any Anglophone for that matter, in Cameroon. I read that letter a long time ago. I wasn't even able to finish reading the letter. Okay. If you see what Ndeli, the misgivings Ndeli had about joining La République during the plebiscite of 1961, everything that EML Ndeli said has come to pass. Okay. Piggybacking to Foncha's letter, when Foncha resigned from CPDM and Paul Biya replaced Foncha with the Fon of Mancon, the Fon of Mancon, Fon Solomon Anye, Anglophone, popularly known, or his name, Fon Anglophone. Fon Anglophone was the first vice chairman of CPDM. But in reality, Fon Anglophone had no role whatsoever. None. It is jerks and jokers like Famin Dongo who decide for CPDM. Okay. We even move on to just take the case of the National Assembly when Fonka Shang was over there. I visited Fonka Shang as a kid. I think this was in maybe 88 or so. And nominations were going on the Radio Cameroon. Nomination, I think, of ministers. And we sat there in the living room with Pa Fonkashan. Pa, as a child, as I was then, Pa was hearing those nominations like me. He did not even know that there would be nominations. Absolutely nothing. So this goes a long way to really exemplify and say, Biya, Paul Biya, I don't know why he sees us from West Cameroon like spent fuel, the type of fuel that nuclear reactors don't need. But like Kines said a few moments. Anyway, in 1980, okay, so, Monsieur Kamwa, look, we had Cameroon Oriental, which is the French Cameroon. We had Cameroon Occidental, which is the southern Cameroon, and Cameroon Meridional. So you cannot sit there and say that in 1984, when Biya brought back La République du Cameroun into the office, Biya caused problems. He's the cause of this war. That is why Fonfoju Gojum Dinka, the founder of the Federal Bar in 1961, promptly took Paul Biya to court and told him that you have seceded. The secessionist in Cameroon is Paul Biya. Why is he trying to divide the country? Huh? Paul Biya is a secessionist.
I think we have come to the end. I would want to get your final thoughts. I understand we are facing deep-seated challenges and issues in that country. And I think programs and platforms like these should give us the opportunity to not only educate, but to look at solutions on addressing these issues. And we have to be truthful to ourselves, truthful to our people, and truthful to the general public, that the international community included. For those of us who have had the advantage to have traveled far and wide, have the exposure to the level of education that we have, the experience, professional experience, and those of us who are from that region, we have that responsibility to show not only to the world, but to our brothers in the French-speaking areas of that country, the deep-seated anger in that country from the English-speaking regions or southern Cameroons. Because if you look, a lot of this conversation, most of the positions, they are subsidiaries. You look at even the vice president of CPDM, as you said, Fonangwafo, late Fonangwafo, he was a vice president. Anglophones are not good enough to assume the role of the president. If you look at from the Senate, the president is a Francophone. The National Assembly, the president is a Francophone. The president of the country is a Francophone. Even the so-called National Council of Traditional Rulers that most people are been exposed to recently, the former president was a Francophone. The one who just replaced him is a Francophone. And you have two spendthrifts in the person of Chief Tabetando of Bacho Entire Kingdom, as one of the vice presidents in charge of conflicts. How fitting to get somebody from a conflict area to be in charge of conflict. And then from Sam Binglo in charge of social affairs. So the opinions we render when we have conversations like this definitely do not represent the editorial policy of Media to Africa, but it is important and imperative that the public should be exposed to these issues so that people are educated and could contribute on how we can resolve this crisis. It is important, as Akine alluded to earlier, without addressing the root cause of this problem, we can easily wish the thing should just disappear. It's not going to go away anytime soon. We can claim that we are managing it. It is hard for you to look people from that region, and even the people from the French region that have taken in huge numbers of internally displaced. If you look at the pressures in cities like Douala, Bafoussam, or even Yaoundé, uh, it is having a social impact. If you look at the refugees in Nigeria, some of them struggling to come through the southern borders here in the US, you would understand that there are deep issues in Cameroon. And a 92-year-old leader would not have the capability to address a lot of these problems. Yeah. So I am going to start with Micheline for her closing thoughts, and then Hubert, Kine, and then Kenneth.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me here today. I want to greet all the followers, and we have the duty to continue to put our words out and support our people back home with what we are doing, and what we have to continue to do it. So I will start by my chiefs. Recently, you guys organized a very great event around culture. You used culture to bring our people together. And bringing our people together is just a first step. They came out to listen to you. But after that, we saw some of our chiefs in Yaoundé giving their support towards the person that is marginalizing them. And this is a huge pain on us. And I hope that our chief will surely come out and say they do apologize for what they did. I want to thank the priests that are coming out, and we are inviting others to join them and put your voice out there. And for the youths of Cameroon, this is your year, this is your time. You guys have been going through a lot for many, many years. You are the only people that can make decisions for change to happen in your own life. Actually, we know the truth. We know who are the political leaders in our country right now. We know the person that we can decide to vote for. I will not campaign for somebody here, for someone here, because I'm not allowed. But you guys know who is the true leader. You guys know the political leader that have been created by the party in power, like the CPDM. You know that many of these people are not political leaders. They have been created, they've been put in there for, to continue to put you guys in shame and in pain. There is one solution. I believe in democracy, and I believe in votes, elections. So please, no matter how bad you're feeling about voting, if you don't vote, then we will lose. Just pick up that card, register to vote, go for voting, then after choose the person that you think can at least sit with you on the table. Mr. Biya is a no-go. He will never sit with you. He never listen to you. He's done nothing for the English-speaking Cameroonians. I think there can be one person, if you looked at, that you can decide to vote for him, and that person going to bring you on the table, and surely for negotiation. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure sharing this platform with all my brothers here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Micheline. Hubert, I think I would give it to you as a brother who speaks with a lot of conviction for what they believe in. I strongly encourage these types of robust discussions on us collectively looking for solutions to problems and challenges that plague that society. Please, your final thought. Do we still have Hubert with us? Okay. Akine, can you come in with your final thoughts? I think it was quite refreshing, not only to give us a historical perspective, but to look at the rot and the decay in the system and the, let me use what the chiefs used, the unflinching call for Biya not to run again, and the need for us to look at the root causes of the problems that are plaguing that country, particularly the southern Cameroons. Please give us your final thoughts.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Tavenyang, for this opportunity to share my thoughts on this vexing issue. But here's my concluding points. You see, unlike political actors who may be viewed with skepticism, Catholic bishops often command widespread trust and respect within their communities. This trust, combined with their spiritual authority, grants them significant influence in shaping public opinion and mobilizing peaceful resistance against oppressive regimes like the one we have in Cameroon. So when Catholic bishops call on Biya not to run, they do so not as political agitators, but as moral guides, urging society to act in accordance with conscience and divine justice. Their appeals are often grounded in a vision of a just society where peace, freedom, and dignity prevail. So, in the face of the initial constitutional inertia and the blockage and the bad governance, the Catholic bishops have both the moral authority and the ethical obligation to call for change at the helm of the state when governance becomes fundamentally unjust and oppressive. So, by advocating for truth, justice, and human dignity, they fulfill their prophetic role and inspire the faithful to work towards a society that reflects the principles of justice, peace, and the common good. So, Cameroon faces complex challenges that demand visionary, energetic, and capable leadership, allowing a 92-year-old man to continue ruling that country risk exacerbating governance failures, stifling democratic progress, and destabilizing the nation. A peaceful transition to a younger, dynamic leadership is essential for fostering stability, growth, and democratic renewal. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Akine, and Akine coming all the way from Boston, MA. Kenneth, can you tie all the loose ends with the very challenging topic for today, given that our people are caught up in the middle and they need really to make that decision, who should they listen? The Catholic Church or the traditional rulers?
Well, I just want to appeal to our fellow traditional rulers that we in Cameroon, going back to our history, Cameroon is Africa in miniature. And some of this history I have personally looked deep into. Those of us in Cameroon, in the Cameroon area, and going perhaps a little bit up to Chad, it turns out that we are descendants of Numurudu Kinana, who is mentioned in the Bible as Nimrod of Canaan. To our traditional rulers, you are custodians of our culture. And what you're doing, urging on a nanogenarian, somebody who is almost at the helm of, almost senile, urging him on to continue to rule. And by the way, 92 is his official age. That's his official age. So why would you be doing this? Please, even if you say these things publicly, go back and write him a secret memo. You know how to get it to him through various channels. You know. Please do so. Then, I wouldn't buy this issue of that, oh, Paul Biya is there, or maybe it's another Betty who can get him out of power. We are hearing all these side conversations of Ferdinand Gongo, Louis Paul Motaze, and even to a certain extent, there was even, what's her name? The wife, Chantal Biya, and then even her son, or maybe Frank Biya. Anyway, look, a northerner has ruled Cameroon, a southerner has ruled Cameroon. We respect you, Mr. President. The stage is still on you. There is time. Leave that stage honorably. Leave the stage honorably, please. You still have time to atone. Yes, because the unintended consequences, the multiplier effect. Honestly, I do not want to see us go through what some other countries have been through, but the ingredients are all there. And the youth of Cameroon, Lord have mercy, those youth are prepared to do what it takes to get their country back in their hands. So while you, Mr. President, make hay while the sun shines, God has blessed you with long life. It's time to retire. Go back to Vomeka, Lembe Yezumland. Have fun with your kids, grandkids, great-grand, what have you. They are a wonderful pleasure to be around.
Thank you, Kenneth. I think we have Hubert back with us. Hubert, I think before Kenneth came in, I said I am very appreciative of you being part of this panel. It takes a man to speak with conviction for what they believe. We can disagree, but we can engage in these robust discussions to help educate the general public and direct the way things are supposed to be done. Some of us are very lucky, like Akine said, it looked like you were one of those people who were among the first 10 in the class. All of us are now over here. So we created the vacuum in Cameroon somehow. And don't blame the people who are there, because if you say the most educated, the smart ones left, somebody needs to fill the vacuum. Thank you for being an active participant on these discussions. Your final thoughts, please.
No, thank you, Tabenyang, for such a wonderful conversation. I think you did an awesome job moderating this this panel. I want to also thank Mrs. Wang and Kenneth Nde, my dear good friend here in the DMV, as well as Ekine from Boston. I think it's very courageous for all of us to come out here and spar on this very sensitive issue. I think we should be having these conversations more frequently. It's, if nothing else, at least it educates others and ourselves again, because I learn everything. I learn something new every time we have these exchanges. What I want to insist on is that the problem that we are facing now is actually a one of, like they say in French, le banc de touche, you see. And it's very important that we find a way to revitalize our political life and regenerate our political leadership. Not just because, like I said, anybody's holding a big stick on our heads, but it's just because it's a matter of institutional survival. And I think, it's true. After 40 years, in power, more than 40 years, there's a certain inertia set in, and people are set in their ways, institutions are set in their ways, We just want that moving forward, these things are done within the realm of law. It is very easy to operate within the context of peace than to operate within the context of chaos. Cameroon is a very diverse country, as we all know, with a very young population who have been exposed to the wonders of the world, for lack of a better word. The dynamics and the challenges that we had in the 60s are different from the dynamics and the challenges that we have in the 2000s. And it's true that we have to innovate, renovate, and do as much as we can to make sure that our government structures, our political ideologies, and our political goals meet the aspirations of these new generations of Cameroonians. I just want us to be clear. There is a need for us to exercise restraint in the words we use, in the attitudes we have, and keep a calm mind so that we can examine with clarity what it is that needs to be done in order for everyone to come out of the table feeling satisfied that they have been acknowledged as a active member of our society. There is no way I will buy into the sentiment that Paul Biya hates Cameroon, Anglophone Cameroonians, or that the Betty people are enemies of the Anglophone Cameroonians. That rhetoric has to be buried. There is no way in this 2025, 2030 span of time, anyone can say there is such tribal animosity in our country. It has been a long road, and we have tried. This is why the CPGM party takes pride in the fact that we have tried to make sure that there is inclusiveness, that every Cameroonian should feel as a Cameroonian. And regardless of the historical baggages that we carried from our colonial masters, we should feel confident and proud to belong to this, our prosperous nation. It is not easy to do what Mr. Biya and his government has done. I just want to say this because sometimes it's easy for us to say, oh, they have failed. I'm telling you, I don't know what would have happened if we did not have at the helm a man of peace. We hope, like I said, it is a transitional issue. Le banc de touche politique. Those who are in the
Thank you, Ubed. Ubed, you don't want us to contribute to continue this
well,
debate again.
let
I
me go
think
ahead and finish it.
I
Let me
no
finish
no.
my
Thank
little
you.
bit.
Like you
Okay,
said,
but I just want
this
to
is
say, no, seriously, I just want to say,
okay.
Tabenyang, so we have to make sure you and I, we all know. I mean, basically, I'm from the Western Province extract, Western region, but you see, I'm not even coming off here as a Francophone, which of course I can claim because I understand that this is my country. I have a wide exposure to English and French and other languages, but I am first and foremost a Cameroonian. I just hope that we should assume that more instead of falling back to these old relics of colonialism. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, thank you. I think it was wonderful having all of you, and please keep your phones open. I want to thank our viewers for those who would review it in their different platforms. This is the spotlight on media to Africa, live from Washington, D.C., every Saturday at 1 p.m. The topics might be challenging, but we are prepared to face them head on. And like I indicated earlier, the opinions are those of the various participants and panelists, not the editorial line of media to Africa. We can disagree. There is no way you're going to get 25 to 30 million people to agree. Certainly, some of us are much more in line with the idea that things have not gone right in that country. It is practically impossible for you to convince a lot of people looking at the state of the economy, the state of the roads, the living standard of the people, the hospitals, the educational system. Even without the Southern Cameroon crisis, that country was already boiling. And it would be honest for us to hold those who represent us, from the traditional rulers to the political leaders, that they are answerable to the people and not to a handful of individuals or a certain cabal that they will lord it over the people. So this is a moment in history. I think it's becoming quite frequent that every election time we drum up these issues. But the youths of Cameroon have their own future in their hands, irrespective of what the traditional leaders say or the institution of the church says. That ultimate decision is in their hands. If we want to move that country forward and resolve the war in the southern Cameroon, it requires the active participation of everyone. Tomorrow is not the beginning or the end. There is hope, like what the bishop say. We understand the very difficult position that the population been put in between. Should they listen to their spiritual guides, which is the church and the bishops and the reverend pastors, reverend fathers, moderators, the imams, and all the other religious institutions, or should they listen to the traditional rulers who also hold sway in their daily lives? That decision is all in their hands. We cannot all agree on what needs to happen, but we would speak with clarity and confront the issues as strongly as we can to make sure that everyone has the necessary information and is armed to make change happen in that country in 2025. Thank you and good night.